Oregon looks like a state of forests, coastline, and quiet timber towns. But drive 15 minutes west of Portland, and you hit a fortress of glass and swoosh logos that generates more money than entire nations. One family sits at the center of it all, and they are worth more than every other Oregonian combined. Their name is Knight. The patriarch, Phil Knight, built a shoe company in his mother's laundry room and turned it into the most valuable athletic brand on earth. Today, the Knight fortune is estimated north of $40 billion. In Oregon, no dynasty even comes close. To understand the money, you have to go back to the University of Oregon in the late 1950s. A skinny middle-distance runner named Philip Knight was training on the track in Eugene. His coach was a legendary, obsessive man named Bill Bowerman. That partnership would change global sport forever. Bowerman was fanatical about lighter, faster shoes. He tore apart footwear and rebuilt it by hand for his athletes. Knight, meanwhile, went to Stanford Business School and wrote a now-famous paper. His thesis argued that cheap, high-quality Japanese running shoes could crush the German brands dominating America. In 1962, Knight flew to Japan and talked his way into a distribution deal with the Onitsuka Tiger Company. He claimed to represent an American firm that didn't actually exist yet. He called it Blue Ribbon Sports. His entire startup was a bluff backed by nerve. Knight and Bowerman each put in $500 and became partners. Knight sold shoes out of the trunk of his green Plymouth Valiant at track meets across the Pacific Northwest. Bowerman kept experimenting on his athletes. The first sales were tiny, but the shoes were fast. Then came the breakthrough. Bowerman poured rubber into his wife's waffle iron and created a revolutionary, grippy sole. That waffle design became the foundation of a shoe empire. By 1971, Blue Ribbon was ready to launch its own brand instead of just reselling Japanese products. They needed a name and a logo. An employee suggested Nike, the Greek goddess of victory. A design student named Carolyn Davidson was paid just $35 to draw the swoosh. Knight famously said he didn't love it, but that it would grow on him. It became one of the most recognized symbols on the planet. Nike's first star was a fiery runner named Steve Prefontaine, an Oregon legend coached by Bowerman. Pre embodied the brand's rebellious spirit before his tragic death at 24. Nike learned early that athletes could sell emotion, not just rubber. That lesson would make the Knights unimaginably rich. By the late 1970s, the running boom exploded across America, and Nike rode the wave. The company relocated its operations to Beaverton, Oregon, just outside Portland. Sales rocketed past $100 million. Then in 1980, Nike went public, and Phil Knight became a paper multimillionaire overnight. But the moment that built the modern fortune came in 1984. A rookie basketball player from North Carolina signed with Nike. His name was Michael Jordan. The Air Jordan line launched the following year and did over $100 million in its first 12 months. Air Jordan didn't just sell shoes, it created sneaker culture, a global obsession worth tens of billions. Nike followed with the Just Do It campaign in 1988, three of the most valuable words in advertising history. The swoosh went from sporting goods to lifestyle religion. As the billions poured in, the Knight family began building an empire back home in Oregon. The Nike World headquarters became a sprawling campus of lakes, forests, and buildings named after athletes. There's a Michael Jordan building, a Tiger Woods Center, a Mia Hamm building. It looks less like an office and more like a private nation. Phil Knight married Penny Parks, a former Portland State student who once worked as Nike's bookkeeper. Together, they raised their family in Oregon, while the fortune grew beyond comprehension. Penny has quietly co-directed much of the family's massive charitable giving. She is the steady counterweight to Phil's relentless drive. But behind the triumph sits deep tragedy. In 2004, the Knight's son Matthew died in a scuba diving accident in El Salvador. He was just 34. The loss reshaped how the family thought about legacy and money. Their giving would soon reach a scale rarely seen in American history. Phil Knight has poured staggering sums into the University of Oregon, his alma mater. He funded athletic facilities so lavish they became national talking points. The football operations building has biometric locks, Italian leather, and Brazilian hardwood. Critics called it excess, but it made Oregon a recruiting powerhouse. The Knights didn't stop at Eugene. They gave $500 million to launch the Knight Cancer Institute at Oregon Health and Science University in Portland. It was one of the largest gifts to a public university in American history. The family has directed billions towards science, education, and medicine. Then came the mega gifts. In 2016, Phil and Penny pledged $500 million to the University of Oregon for a science campus. Later, they committed another $500 million to a Portland Neuroscience Center. Few private citizens in America have ever reshaped a state's institutions like the Knights. But the Knight fortune wasn't built without controversy. Through the 1990s, Nike faced brutal accusations over sweatshop labor in Asian factories. Reports of child workers, low wages, and unsafe conditions triggered global protests and campus boycotts. The swoosh became a symbol of globalization's dark side. Phil Knight admitted the company had become synonymous with slave wages and abuse. Nike overhauled its labor monitoring and became, over time, more transparent about its supply chain. The crisis nearly damaged the brand permanently. Instead, Nike survived and kept growing, and the Knight fortune kept compounding. In 2004, Knight stepped down as Nike's chief executive, but stayed as chairman. He handpicked successors and kept a firm grip on the brand's soul. In 2016, he finally released his memoir, Shoe Dog, a raw account of the early struggle. It revealed just how close the whole empire came to collapse in the early years. Today, Nike is worth well over $100 billion as a public company. Phil Knight still holds a commanding stake, largely through a complex web of family trusts and holding companies. He's transferred enormous chunks of stock to his heirs to shield the fortune from taxes. The money is being locked into the next generation. The primary heir is Travis Knight, Phil's surviving son. But Travis didn't want to run a shoe company. As a young man, he even pursued a career as a rapper before finding his true calling in animation. His path away from Nike is one of the most unusual stories in any billionaire dynasty. Travis became the CEO of Leica, a stop-motion animation studio based in Oregon and funded by his father. Leica produced acclaimed films like Coraline, Paranorman, and Kubo and the Two Strings. It's a passion project bankrolled by Nike billions. Travis turned the family fortune into art instead of sneakers. Yet Travis still sits at the center of the Nike empire. He serves as chairman of Nike's board, guarding the family's legacy at the company his father built. So the son who ran from the shoe business now oversees it. The dynasty's future runs directly through him. The Knight real estate footprint stretches across Oregon and beyond. Phil owns waterfront property, and the family has invested in vast tracts of land. Their name is stamped on buildings from Eugene to Portland to Stanford. In many ways, the Knights are woven into the physical geography of the entire state. Phil Knight is also a private aviation enthusiast with access to elite jets, and the family moves in the rarefied world of global billionaires. Yet in Oregon, Phil is often described as surprisingly low-key. For decades, he wore sunglasses everywhere, guarding his privacy like a state secret. The most powerful man in Oregon rarely wanted the spotlight. His political influence, however, has been anything but quiet. Phil Knight has poured tens of millions into Oregon politics, especially governor's races. He backed candidates hoping to reshape the state's leadership. Few individuals have spent so heavily to influence a single state's direction. The scale of the Knight giving is almost hard to believe. Between the University of Oregon, OHSU, Stanford, and countless other causes, the family has pledged well over $2 billion. Phil once said his goal was to give away most of his fortune. He signed on to the spirit of history's greatest philanthropists. Still, questions swirl about the true size of the family wealth. Because so much is held in private trusts and gifted stock, the real number is difficult to pin down. Estimates place Phil Knight alone above $35 billion, with the broader family fortune even larger. It is, without question, the largest concentration of wealth Oregon has ever produced. Compare it to Oregon's other fortunes, and the gap is staggering. The state has timber dynasties, tech founders, and grocery magnates. But none of them touch the swoosh. The Knights don't just top the list. They are in a category entirely their own. So what happens next? Phil Knight is now in his late 80s, and the transition of power is well underway. Travis Knight holds the chairmanship, the trusts hold the stock, and the philanthropy machine keeps running. The dynasty has been carefully engineered to outlive its founder by generations. The grandchildren represent the third generation of Knight wealth. They will inherit not just money, but influence over a company that dresses half the athletes on Earth. Whether they choose sneakers, cinema, science, or something new, They'll do it with an ocean of capital behind them. The empire is designed to endure. From a laundry room startup and a car trunk full of Japanese shoes, the Knights built one of the great fortunes of the modern age. They turned a $35 logo into a symbol seen billions of times a day, and they poured that money back into the state that raised them. Oregon and the Knights are now inseparable. So the next time you lace up a pair of sneakers or see that swoosh flash across a screen, remember the family in the quiet forests of Beaverton. They don't own Oregon on paper, but their money, their names, and their vision are everywhere you look. If you enjoyed this deep dive into hidden dynasties, subscribe and stay tuned, because the next empire we uncover might be even bigger.